All right, folks, welcome to Backyard or At Home Taxidermy with Mr. K. We're going to have some fun again today. Our goal is to put the squirrels back together. This is part two. Actually, if we break it into three parts, part two is preserving, stuffing, and sewing. And then part three, because we can freeze after that point, part three then is taking that squirrel, giving it shape, and making it look lifelike. So we got a couple parts here. The first part was taking it apart. If you haven't watched that, that was kind of fun and went pretty well. I was able to do it in 25 minutes, which shocked me. But here we go. I've got the squirrels. What I've done is I washed them in soapy water, cold soapy water, because we don't want bacterial growth. I use a little Dawn dish soap, and I mix up a bucket of water and Dawn. And then we got them all ready to go here. Now, I would pat them dry a little bit. I'm not worried about being too wet at this moment, because what I need to do now is flush them out. So I've got to get all of this meat and fat and linings off of the skin. And you can see a simple scraper tool in your hands can get you a little ways here. Just by peeling muscle off of the skin. If you leave it behind, muscle gets pretty gross. And our preservative has a harder time penetrating too much of it. So we get as much of it off as possible. I plan on, if I can make this work, because I've never used recording software like what I have right now. And I know the video quality isn't spectacular. I apologize for my lack of knowledge on the video end, but you know, this COVID-19 deal, having to teach from home, means I gotta do things a little bit differently. So hopefully my students enjoy this video. Anyways, so the goal is to scrape all of this off. And just getting in there with the scraper can do a lot. Now our other goal is to not cut a hole, which this kind of scraper does pretty well at not cutting a hole. If I work on the same spot too much, I will make a hole, and that happens. And any holes we make, we just have to sew up later. It just adds more work. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just not a very fast thing. And of course, one of my goals here is to be fairly quick at this job for two reasons. One of which is I want to be done and enjoy the weather outside. It's beautiful out there. And this is not exactly my strength. I'm not a taxidermist. I'm not a professional taxidermist by any means. I've actually only completed a mount or two. Helped a lot of students with their stuff. And I've had a couple students that took it in high school as the wildlife class and got interested in a little bit of the taxidermy and went, you know, I want to do that. And one for sure, another that's kind of working in a shop, but one started his own business doing it. Went off to school to a taxidermy school and gained the skills he needed to be successful. Another thing about squirrel taxidermy and wildlife, you might be like, why are you doing squirrel taxidermy? Very strange. I understand your point. But it exposes kids to different ideas. Not necessarily huge careers. I mean, you'd only need so many taxidermists, but if they don't want to pursue it as a career, it can be a hobby. It exposes kids. I've had kids interested in going into nursing or being a doctor who were worried about, oh, can I handle a scalpel? Can I deal with blood and things? And you know what? I've had a number of those kids go, that was a good class. I really learned a lot about safety, a lot about scalpels and using the tools. And it made me comfortable enough that it took away that barrier to going into that as an option. Another tool I like to use is a scalpel. Here I have just a simple surgical scalpel that I got from a supply due to the fact that it was expired. And these kinds of things, apparently they have a date where they say the sterility is no longer guaranteed. That's fine. Don't need sterility when working with a squirrel. especially one that I'm not planning on it. Like, I'm not trying to bring it back to life. I'm trying to make it look like it's alive again, but here we go. So I can trim. A couple of factors in trimming: be careful. It's like deboning meat. You want to make sure you're not cutting toward your fingers. You're not going to cut yourself. You want to get on that membrane in between, that little white line between the membrane, or between the skin and the meat. And so doing that will keep you from cutting a hole. And again, the more you can use your thumb and fingers to get this stuff off, the better. It's just gonna be less likely to cut holes that way. Sometimes you get a part that's pretty tough. Get in here with that blade and just encourage it a little bit. Get yourself a little handle that you can tug on here. And that helps. Put a little pressure on it. Now, once we get it a little ways, a lot of times we can come back with the scraper and just peel. There we go. You have to be most cautious around the areas where the squirrel was shot. If it was shot, if it's a roadkill, wherever bones are poking through. It's nice to do taxidermy on roadkill if you know it's fresh. It's kind of gross to do it if it's not fresh. Nothing wrong with doing a roadkill squirrel. In fact, taking something that died kind of unfortunately, hopefully very quickly, but unfortunately, you know, and taking it and giving it life again is kind of cool. My wife actually once found a pheasant that had just been struck in the road, brought it in, and we taxidermed that in a class, and that was a lot of fun. It actually came out pretty good. Simple projects, and they're not, I mean, yeah, to do it well, it's going to take you probably a couple hours. The first one always takes about twice as long as the rest, but it's not a bad project. And your second and third projects always turn out way better than the first one. One of the advantages to being able to do this in high school a little bit. I mean, we talk about anatomy, physiology, you know, the parts and how they work together. Parts and functions is some of my favorite learning when we talk about habitats, and we're looking at what adaptations does the squirrel have to be able to survive in different areas. What does that habitat look like? What is the predators it has to worry about? What does it consume? Its diet, all of those. And I tell you what, when we get to the digestive system of the squirrel and taking it apart, it can be kind of fun to talk about. And a lot of kids expose the digestive system. The goal is when doing taxidermy is to not really open up that can of worms because it gets pretty stinky pretty fast. But, you know, working with high school students makes that a little bit, I mean, they're going to make mistakes, and mistakes are okay. Learn from mistakes, you get better. All right, now here's a little bit of cheek meat. Trim off that little bit of cheek. Sorry you can't see it. The eyes are out, back of the skull is clean. This squirrel is just about ready. I mean, I should lay it a little bit flatter, take the scraper on it one more time. Yeah, there's a little bit on the edge here. Get that off. Work that off. You'll notice I have a little hair slippage on this one. I was worried about that with this one. When I got it, it had sat out a little bit. It was not sure if this one was a roadkill or what, but it had sat out a little bit longer than it should have before getting into the freezer. I like to get these specimens into the freezer right away if possible. So this one had a little hair slippage, meaning little bacterial growth, and causes the hair to slip off. So this one's pretty close to ready. The other one here, I got to pat dry a little bit. This one's a lot closer. For starting, makes it a little bit faster. The reason I'm doing two is for my mount, I want to do 2 squirrels. Well, I came across 2 squirrels, so that's one factor. But I want to do 2 squirrels in a canoe. So now I'll have to make a little canoe, but that should be fun. Got some woodworking projects to do anyways. And I know it's kind of boring watching Mr. K just cut and scrape and work. But it gives you an idea of how thorough you have to be on this project. If you are already bored of the cutting and scraping, jump ahead probably 3 minutes. That's about how long I think it'll take me from here. And you'll see hopefully the next step at that point. What do you think, bud? You're not on camera, but you can talk. I don't want you on camera though. Kind of unique. All right, this one looks really clean. A little bit of fat and stuff on there. Back of the skull's clean. 3 minutes might have been an overestimation. This guy's ready also. So I'll dry these now, and then we'll get to the next step. I am gonna cut the video or pause the video for a period of time here to get them dried, because you don't need to watch me dry them. And then we'll get on to the next step. So that was kind of fleshing a little bit. Not real big on this squirrel taxidermy side. You don't have to do a ton, but it's break time. I can figure out the recordings.